Hey everyone, and welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. We're going to be talking lithium today, and specifically Arcadium Lithium, ticker symbol ALTM. You may have seen ALTM in the news lately because their stock price jumped over 8% in just one day, and that always gets my attention. So what's going on? Well, it all starts with a pretty big acquisition bid from a mining giant. You might have heard of Rio Tinto.
Yeah, Rio Tinto offered to buy Arcadium Lithium for $6.85 a share. It's an all-cash deal, and that comes out to $6.7 billion total. So this is a really clear sign that we're seeing some consolidation in the lithium market.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so this acquisition is huge.
Mhm.
But does that mean Arcadium is a sure bet for investors? I mean, regulatory hurdles are a real thing, right?
Absolutely. But Arcadium Lithium has already cleared some pretty major hurdles. They've gotten clearance from CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, so no national security concerns there. And they've gotten merger control waivers from Australia, Canada, China, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom.
Okay, wow, that's a lot of boxes checked.
Hmm.
But it sounds like there's more.
Right. Yeah, approvals are still pending in Australia, Canada, and Italy. So while things are moving in the right direction, there's still a bit of uncertainty, which tends to keep those investors, on their toes.
Oh man, the suspense is killing me. But let's step back for a second. Even with all this acquisition talk, what about Arcadium Lithium themselves? What are they bringing to the table here?
Arcadium Lithium has been making some big moves, especially with their recent mergers with Allkem and Livent. This has really turned them into a major player in the lithium market.
Mergers, acquisitions, it seems like all the cool kids are doing it these days. I'm kidding. But I'm more interested in the hard numbers here. What do their financials look like?
Sure. So if we look at the numbers, Arcadium has a market cap of roughly $5.67 billion. Their revenue for the past year, the trailing 12 months, was $900.6 million. And they brought in a net income of $155.1 million. Their earnings per share EPS is 16 cents, and their price to earnings ratio, or PE ratio, is 33.88, which is pretty significant.
Okay, so that high PE ratio, that usually means investors are expecting big things even when the market's kind of shaky, right?
That's a good observation. A high PE ratio can definitely be a sign of strong growth expectations, even when there is some market uncertainty. And there are a few factors that are contributing to this positive outlook for Arcadium.
Okay, I'm listening. What's making investors so bullish on ALTM?
So first of all, the lithium market is expected to rebound in 2025. It's expected to have a dip in 2024 just because of oversupply. But a big reason for this comeback is electric vehicles.
The EV revolution, right? Seems like everyone's talking about electric cars these days. And I can definitely see why that would be good news for lithium producers. Because you need lithium for those EV batteries.
Exactly, and this increase in demand for EVs is likely to make lithium prices go up, which would then improve the profitability for companies like Arcadium. And then on top of that, of course, you have the Rio Tinto acquisition news, which is generating even more excitement.
Yeah, it makes sense when a huge company like Rio Tinto wants to buy you out. It sends a signal that you're onto something good. But let's not forget about the technical side of things. What are the charts telling us about ALTM?
ALTM is currently trading at $5.71, so that's an 8.16% increase from just the day before. And if you look at the short-term moving averages, the 5-day and the 20-day trends, they're both pointing upwards. And that supports the overall, the current bullish sentiment.
So we've got positive news, we've got a recovering market, and the technical indicators are looking pretty good. Seems like ALTM has a lot going for it.
Yeah.
But I like to look ahead. What should investors be keeping an eye on? What are the potential, red flags or upcoming milestones that we should be watching out for?
Well, one really important event is going to be Arcadium's earnings announcement, and that's scheduled for February 20th, 2025. That will give us a lot more insight into their financial health and how they're doing in the market.
It's like the company report card, and all the investors will be, watching very carefully. But what about the bigger picture for Arcadium?
Well, the potential for growth that's driven by electric vehicles is huge. This continued increase in demand for EVs could be really, really beneficial for Arcadium.
It's amazing to think about how this shift toward, sustainable energy is changing all these industries. And it's creating so many new investment opportunities. But let's be real, market volatility is always a concern. How does that factor into all of this?
You're absolutely right. We can't ignore the market. And even though things look good for Arcadium, the market can be unpredictable. So investors need to be aware of these fluctuations and make good decisions based on their own, risk tolerance and their investment goals.
Solid advice. So much to consider with Arcadium Lithium. We've covered a lot today. We've explored the potential of this company and all the excitement around it. But we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Investing Talk Podcast. Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. Before the break, we were talking about the potential of Arcadium Lithium, especially with all the hype around electric vehicles. You mentioned some interesting technical indicators. Could you break those down a bit more for those of us who aren't, expert chart readers?
Yeah, of course. One indicator we can look at is the Relative Strength Index, or RSI. And as of today, ALTM has a 14-day RSI of about 58.21.
Okay, RSI. That sounds familiar, but to be honest, I always get a little lost with all these acronyms. Could you maybe explain it like I'm five? What does that number actually tell us, and why should investors even care?
Sure. So basically think of RSI as a way to measure how much a stock's price has been moving up or down recently. It gives us a clue about whether a stock is overbought, meaning it's gotten, too hot and might be due for a cool down, or oversold, meaning it's been beaten down and could be a bargain. So a high RSI above 70 usually means that a stock is overbought, and a low RSI below 30 usually suggests that it's oversold.
So an RSI of 58.21 for Arcadium means that it's kind of in the middle, right? Not too hot, not too cold.
Exactly. It's in that neutral zone, which suggests that, while ALTM has seen a recent jump in price, it's not necessarily at a level that should set off any alarm bells.
Okay, that makes sense. But isn't a neutral RSI a bit, boring? Wouldn't we want to see more excitement, either a super high or super low reading?
Not necessarily. A neutral RSI can actually be a good thing.
Yeah.
It could mean that the stock's price is moving in a sustainable way, not getting too far ahead of itself or lagging behind.
I like that analogy. So steady and stable wins the race.
Yeah.
What other technical clues should we be paying attention to?
Another important piece of the puzzle is trading volume. And as of January 8th, 2025, ALTM had a trading volume of 107,578,937 shares. That's way above its average volume, which is about 15,181,086 shares.
Whoa, that's a big spike in trading volume. Doesn't that usually mean there's a lot of investor interest? Like everybody's suddenly paying attention.
Exactly. When you see a surge in both price and volume, it's a strong indication that something is driving that momentum. It's not just random noise.
So the high trading volume for ALTM is basically confirmation that all the buzz around the company is actually translating into action from investors.
Yeah, and to add another layer to this, let's talk about moving averages. These are lines on a chart that show the average price of a stock over a specific period of time, and they can help us spot trends and potential support or resistance levels. So for ALTM, the 5-day moving average is $5.32, and the 20-day moving average is $5.14. Both of those short-term moving averages are trending upwards, which again supports that bullish sentiment that we've been discussing.
Okay, so it seems like all the signs are pointing in the same direction
Yeah.
upwards. But even with these positive signals, I like to play devil's advocate sometimes. Are there any warning signs or anything that makes you think twice about ALTM?
Well, it's always important to remember that technical indicators are just one piece of the puzzle. You also need to consider a company's fundamentals, things like their financials, their market position, and their overall growth potential.
Right? We can't get caught up in the hype and forget about the actual business.
Exactly. And speaking of the bigger picture, let's not forget about the driving force behind all this optimism for Arcadium Lithium, the electric vehicle revolution.
Yes, the EV craze. It seems like everybody's talking about electric cars these days. But why is this so significant for a lithium company?
Well, the growth of the EV market is a complete game changer for the lithium industry. As more and more people switch from gas-powered cars to electric vehicles, the demand for lithium, which is a key ingredient in EV batteries, is going to skyrocket. And that creates a huge opportunity for companies like Arcadium that are positioned to capitalize on this trend.
So they're in the right place at the right time with the right product. It sounds like they've got a pretty good setup. But luck aside, what are they actually doing to take advantage of this opportunity?
Well, Arcadium isn't just sitting around and waiting. They've been making strategic moves to capitalize on this trend. For example, their mergers with Allkem and Livent have really expanded their operations and their market reach, and they've cleared all those regulatory hurdles for their acquisition by Rio Tinto, which is going to further strengthen their position in the lithium market.
Sounds like they're making all the right moves and setting themselves up for success. But even with all this potential, there are always risks, right? What should investors be wary of when it comes to ALTM?
One thing that's always a concern for investors is market volatility. We've talked about this before, but it's worth repeating. Even the strongest companies can be affected when the market gets bumpy.
So even if Arcadium's doing everything right, their stock price could still take a hit if the overall market decides to, have a bad day.
That's the nature of investing, unfortunately. Another thing to think about is competition. The lithium market is becoming more and more crowded with new companies popping up all the time. So Arcadium needs to stay on top of their game and keep innovating to stay ahead of the curve.
It's a competitive world out there. Lots of potential, but definitely some risks to watch out for. What are some key events or developments that investors should be following closely in the coming months?
So one important event we already mentioned is Arcadium's earnings announcement on February 20th, 2025. That's going to give us a lot of insight into their financial performance, their production capacity, and what their plans are for the future.
It's like the company's time to shine. And of course, there's the ongoing acquisition by Rio Tinto. They've gotten a lot of approvals, but there's still a few pending. Any updates on that could definitely move the market.
Absolutely. And then we have the ever-changing EV market and the lithium industry as a whole. It's a fast-moving space that requires investors to stay informed and be ready to adapt.
So much to keep track of. It's a challenge, but that's also what makes investing so interesting.
Hmm.
With all that said, what are the main takeaways for our listeners about Arcadium Lithium and their investment potential?
I would say that Arcadium is definitely an interesting company to watch in the lithium space. And they seem to be in a really good position to benefit from this booming EV market. Their mergers, their acquisitions, and their overall financial performance have created a really strong foundation for future growth.
So it sounds like they've got the talent, the resources, and the momentum to really succeed in this market.
Yeah.
But like with any investment, there's always a but, right?
Right. Investing always comes with risks. We have to remember that things like market swings, intense competition, and unexpected events can impact even the most promising companies.
Words of wisdom. So as we wrap up this part of our Investing Talk podcast about Arcadium Lithium, what should our listeners keep in mind as they think about this company and its potential?
I think the main takeaway is that Arcadium Lithium offers a compelling investment opportunity in a rapidly growing market. Their focus on lithium production combined with the rise of electric vehicles is a very exciting combination.
It's like a perfect storm of innovation disruption and the potential for significant profits. But I'm sure there's also a word of caution that comes with all of this.
Of course. It's important to approach any investment with a healthy dose of realism. Don't get swept up in the hype. It's crucial to consider both the potential rewards and the inherent risks. Do your research, stay informed about market trends, and most importantly, make decisions that align with your own investment goals and your risk tolerance.
Great advice. And remember, this is just a starting point. We encourage everyone to do their own research on Arcadium Lithium, look at their financials, track their progress, and come to your own conclusions.
Investing is a journey, and the more informed you are, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the ups and downs of the market and make smart decisions.
Well said. We want to thank you all for joining us for this episode of Investing Talk podcast. We hope this conversation has been helpful and insightful. And as always, we encourage you to subscribe to our podcast, share it with your friends and colleagues, and leave a comment with your thoughts or questions. We'd love to hear from you. Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast. We've been discussing Arcadium Lithium, ticker symbol ALTM, and their potential in this growing lithium market. We've talked about their earnings report that's coming up, the acquisition by Rio Tinto that's in the works, and of course the growth of electric vehicles. But I want to kind of zoom out for a second and think about the big picture. What does this whole lithium boom mean for the world?
That's a really great question. One of the interesting things is how this huge increase in demand for lithium is happening at the same time as this global shift towards sustainability and clean energy. It's like we're at this turning point, and lithium is a big part of that.
Yeah, it's kind of poetic, isn't it? This metal that's been hidden underground for so long is now powering this clean energy revolution. But are we overlooking any downsides here? Mining can have a big impact on the environment.
Yeah, that's a really important point. As investors, we can't just chase profits and ignore what's happening to the environment and to communities. We need to ask ourselves, how is this lithium being extracted? What impact is it having on the people and the ecosystems in those areas? Those are tough questions, but if you're a responsible investor, you need to think about those things.
So it's not just about making money. It's about making sure that money is made in a way that's ethical and sustainable. Are companies like Arcadium thinking about these things?
They are. A lot of companies in the lithium industry are actually taking steps to reduce their impact on the environment. They're investing in technology to use less water. They're trying to figure out how to recycle lithium batteries. And they're working with local communities to make sure that their operations are actually helping, not hurting.
That's good to hear. It seems like a lot of companies are realizing that sustainability isn't just good for the planet. It's good for business, too.
Yeah.
Consumers want to buy from companies that are doing things the right way.
That's right. And a lot of investors are also looking at a company's ESG track record. That stands for environmental, social, and governance. It's becoming a big factor in how people decide where to put their money.
So it's not just about profits anymore. It's about purpose. It's about investing in companies that are actually trying to make the world a better place. It sounds like Arcadium's on the right track, but how can investors be sure? What should we be looking for?
Transparency is key. Look for companies that are open about their environmental and social practices. Companies that are publishing sustainability reports, talking to different stakeholders, and willing to answer the tough questions about how they operate.
It's like a company's reputation is becoming just as important as their financial performance. They have to show that they're not just trying to make a quick buck, but that they're building a business that's sustainable and benefits everyone.
So it sounds like Arcadium is doing a lot of things right, but there's always more to learn, right? What are some key questions that investors should be asking as they research this company?
A few things to consider. How well are they managing their water usage in areas where water is scarce? Are they doing enough to make sure their mining operations don't damage the local environment? Are they putting money into research to figure out how to recycle lithium batteries better? Those are just a few examples, but the main thing is to really do your research and understand how committed the company is to sustainability.
So due diligence is more important than ever. Investors need to do their homework and ask the right questions before they invest. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the technical aspects of Arcadium Lithium stock to the bigger trends in the lithium market. But as we wrap up this episode of Investing Talk podcast, what are some key takeaways for our listeners? I think the most important thing to remember is that the lithium market is a really exciting investment opportunity. The growth of the electric vehicle industry is creating a huge demand for lithium, and companies like Arcadium Lithium are in a great position to benefit from that growth.
It's a chance to be part of an industry that's changing the way we think about energy and transportation. But of course, as with any investment, there are risks.
Exactly. Market volatility is always something to consider, and the lithium market can be unpredictable. Competition is getting more intense, so it's important to understand each company's strengths and their potential for growth. But most importantly, we need to remember that this isn't just about making money, it's about investing in a future that's sustainable and profitable.
That's a great point. We can't forget about the impact our investments are having on the world around us. So to wrap up this episode of Investing Talk podcast, what final thoughts would you leave our listeners with?
I encourage everyone to keep learning about Arcadium Lithium. Look at their financials and find out as much as you can about their sustainability efforts. Ask those tough questions, have those discussions, and make smart investment choices that match your values.
That's great advice. Investing is a journey, and the more you know, the better decisions you'll make. So thank you for joining us on Investing Talk podcast. We hope you enjoyed this conversation and learned something new. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, tell your friends about it, and leave us a comment with your thoughts or questions. We always appreciate your feedback.